Ari Kesisoglu was an internet pioneer in Turkey. He then came to INSEAD in 2003 and was then hired by Google to open offices in Eastern Europe and is now head of Google's Middle East and North Africa region. Welcome to Alumni Experience, Ari. You came to INSEAD when you were quite young, 26. What were you doing before then?
I started as an investment banker, actually, and then afterwards, like a year later, I had this company. I had this website, not a company back then, that I had started in the undergrad. It was nothing rocket science, but I happened to own one of the first Turkish domain names. That's where I am originally. And because I had started it in the undergrad, and then, so it was quite early days of the internet in Turkey. So it got quite big. How big? Like when the internet's population was like 5 million people in Turkey, like my site had like 1 million subscribers. So that's like a decent size. And I did that for 3 years. It was an amazing experience. We monetized it. It was an entertainment site. At the beginning, it started with jokes and funny pictures, and it moved towards like more interactive stuff with the technology back then. So towards like gaming and chatting and matchmaking and so forth. And then as the mobile wave came through, we did like mobile entertainment. So the site became profitable and all, but it did not fulfill my dreams, and I moved on.
You graduated from INSEAD in 2004 and then went straight to work for Google in London. How did that come about?
Actually, I have the best case ever. I applied. I sent my CV to jobs@google.com. As simple as that. To a position that I thought I was really a good fit to, and there we go. So people do read these CVs, okay? Don't feel like you're sending your CV to like a black box. Actually, there are people, there are like hundreds of them, who are reading this stuff. And we have a pretty good system that matches, people to the roles and so forth. So it works out well. So that's how I got it. I'm like the living example that this stuff works.
I read that you came 16th out of 1 million in the Turkish university entrance exam. Is that what Google looks for? People with these incredible standardized test results?
Look, I think it applies to anything. So say you have a guy in front of you with 800 GMAT, or I know something of this sort, a very high score in a standardized test. That's always a good thing. Is Google interested? I would say in the 9-10 years that I've been in the company, the company is always, because it's a science company at the end of the day. So an academic background is very important. But at the beginning of my career, I would say people put more attention to the academic career. And now as the company gets bigger and more professional, a lot of different ways, so the professional experience also, is getting a lot more weight now. But I want to repeat that Google is a science company, so academic background is always important, and being an alumni of a good school, is always a plus.
One of your roles for Google has been opening new offices in new territories. What's that like?
It's an amazing experience, I have to say. So when I joined, I was actually quite early in the emerging markets team in London. So we didn't have any offices in any emerging markets in EMEA. And that's how international expansion works. And so, typically the story goes like this. You have a successful startup in Silicon Valley, and then they have first their US offices, probably the first office would be in London, in New York, and then, so some other place in the US. Then typically they either go to Canada or to Latin America, depending on their business. So Mexico is typically the first international expansion because I guess of cultural affinity and so forth, and then they start coming to EMEA, so that would be the UK, Germany, France, and so forth, and then so after that either they go to Asia or they start opening up emerging markets. So I came to Google when we were opening up the emerging markets back then. Now the experience is actually quite amazing because so on one hand you have a large company, large company, next to you, and on the other hand you are literally almost non-existent in the country that you're going into, right? So and that's building the operation from scratch. It's an amazing experience. So you have to deal with So it's a big project management, like the legal entity, the tax structures, the hiring of the first management folks, and the setting of the operation, the setting of the business rhythm, and so forth. It's a great experience. And now, after a couple of years, like 5 to 10 years, these countries become like large operating entities. It's quite, a satisfying thing to see.
For a lot of Silicon Valley companies, there's this cliche that they're completely run by an engineering elite in California and that nobody else really gets a look in decision making. Is that true for Google?
At Google, there are like two major areas, I would say. So one, there's engineering, and then the other is business. And I was always on the business side. Did I feel like a second citizen, second-class citizen? No, never. Never. Because if you think about it, it's and that's how Larry puts it all the time. Economy is an important part of the game. So so the business side needs to generate the sustainability for the company, so that the company can invest to the amazing new areas that it's investing. And yes, there's a lot of product innovation going on in the engineering world, which is amazing. I'm really glad we have that. But also there's innovation that can go on like in different parts of the company. You can innovate on the sales side, on the finance side, and on the operations side, etc. So I think that Google is quite like good towards like every single employee. We do like yearly surveys on like how people are doing. I think people are happy regardless of what department they're in general.
A lot of tech companies talk about their mission, and lots of people find this very appealing, and lots of people are quite cynical about this. Do you, when you're as an insider in Google, is that sense of mission real?
There's an umbrella that I guess covers kind of like the majority of people at Google, and then depending on which organization you're in within the company, you would have like a slightly modified version of it still within the umbrella, I would say. But I guess a good acid test to check whether this is valid or not in a company is you just ask, say, at any company any multinational company, you would have like a couple of interviews to get in. You just ask them, what's your company mission? Just out of blue. I would bet you like not many people would expect that question from an interviewee in the interview. And then if you get the same answer throughout your interviews, okay, it's a good sign.